Cadell Nelson.
Hey, Jazz.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you? How's Korea?
It's pretty good. Had a live music festival Friday, Saturday that was free with some really big names in K-pop that a 10-minute walk from here that I went to both days. So yeah, pretty good. I'm a school teacher here. I met a bunch of my kids, which was really fun. I love meeting my kids. So it's one of the great pleasures, actually, of being a teacher is meeting my students in the non-teacher context.
Yeah, I teach as well. I teach the older kids, the not technically kids, the college level. So
right. I actually prefer teaching elementary school kids. In Korea, and I promise I'll finish with this tangent just in a sec. In Korea, they're in school a lot. My 9 to 11-year-old students, in addition to the hours they spend every day in elementary school, are also in extra classes on an average of 20 hours a week. I have 9 and 11-year-olds who are in school 60 hours a week. Which is insane, I know. And so by the time they reach middle school, they're really burnt out and don't want to be there. But they manage to stay excited about it all through elementary school. So they have good attitudes at that point still.
yeah, so I was going to say Korea is a little different than the U.S., where elementary school is not the worst. I think middle school is the worst. And I subbed in high school, and I realized that I didn't want to teach high school after all.
I don't mind high school, but middle school is, well, puberty.
Yeah. And I was in a very good. I subbed a couple times in a very good Christian private school, and they were pretty nuts. And it was small classes and everything, And I just couldn't imagine the high school or the public school where there's no discipline. And, we don't have stuff. We won't get into this, but basically it's discipline at home. And I think Koreans are probably much better than Americans.
And the test, I promised us the last distraction, the test that you take in your senior year here, and it's actually called the third grade, but your third grade of your senior year is 9 hours long. And it's an actual 9 hours. And if you blow it, you don't go to a good university. I mean, and you test for which high school you go to, and you then test for university, and it's a hard test. Korea is the second highest level of suicide among kids in the world because of that problem, that issue.
Yeah, China has the similar type. Yeah. I mean, they work, study, work, study, work until they get their test, and then they find high school and stuff over here very easy, and we're kind of the opposite. College is more difficult than everybody graduates high school if they just attend it.
Exactly. So
okay, so I guess we can
go for it.
Okay, so you really wanted to take this on. The Christian God of the Bible is the most reasonable explanation of and for our world, and so it's kind of a little difficult because I know you don't necessarily believe in a God. So then to take this and say, not only is there a God, which I think there's a great argument to be made for that, but that the Christian God is the most reasonable of the gods available. And so I could take on faith. I kind of talked about some of these before. There's a lot of great philosophers. I like Frank Turek, and Lennox is brilliant, and Ravi Zacharias, one of my favorite. My favorite, Phil Fernandez. They all have lots of stuff on this. Number one, faith. I think faith is not a problem, but everybody has faith in something, and faith. I think the blind faith is the only time you could say, okay, blind faith, yeah, that's a problem. But I think it is the atheist that has the blind faith, that he or she assumes that what he sees in the real world is real and true, and that his observations are valid. And I think in order to believe that to be true, you need to believe in empiricism and reason. But what is the foundation behind that without a God? It's determinism, and is your belief in that already predetermined, and therefore it would not be valid because you would have no choice other than to believe that your empirical views are true, and therefore they themselves would not be true. And so I think there's a lot of problems there. Reason, where does reason come from? The atheists often say, oh, we need to use reason and empiricism and see how the world works. And I say, okay, but can you prove to me that reason exists? What is reason? Can you prove that it's valid, that it's true? From a Christian worldview, I can say God created man in his image and likeness and granted him free will for one, but also granted him the gift of reason. Now, with the fall, again, we're going back to the Judeo-Christian view of the biblical fall, where our use of reason itself is perfect, but our use of reason, because we are corrupted, our use of reason is not perfect. And so, but reason itself is there. And so from the Christian worldview, there is reason, there is moral laws. God set forth certain things that man shall and shall not do. Killing a human is not like killing an animal. Can get into that if you want. I think I don't know if you want to cut in here, or should I keep going?
I'll wait until you have
exhausted myself.
Well,
no.
I don't know whether you have a first point or first points, but I'm content to let you get everything out you need for your initial position.
Okay, I'll just name the points. I won't go into details, but again, I mentioned faith. We have a faith in something real, something personal, which is another thing I'll get into. Reason. I think reason is valid, but only because we have a God of reason. Moral laws. I think moral laws exist. Universal objective moral laws exist, but C.S. Lewis' argument that they require a moral law giver. So everybody believes evil, and the philosopher in his classroom will go and say that everything is subjective and there is no universal truth and there is no universal, which is a self-repeating statement, but there is no objective moral laws and there is no right and wrong. And then he goes and sees his window smashed and he wants justice. Right? So I think for the Christian God, the Christian God is a personal God. So where does the idea of love come from? Only the Christian God really exhibits a God of love. We can talk about the three major religions, the Judeo-Christian religion and Christianity, and we could throw in Catholicism as well. As a Protestant, I don't think Catholicism and Christianity mesh very well, but that's another topic.
Yeah, that's a big other topic. That's a big other topic.
Yeah, so they pray to Mary, they do, Mary is the co-redemptrix, all that. So we're not getting into that. Sure. It doesn't matter. But I think the God, a personal God of love and of reason, is best explained by, or only explained by, the Judeo-Christian God. The fact that we can never understand God fully, but that he does explain himself in ways that we can understand, that God talks to us in the form of the Bible. Not that, and sometimes he does, but not that, I think God talks to me or anything like that, but that through his word, right? That's and you said you were once a believer, so you understand that. Right.
I do. Yep.
So DNA code, again, I think love is a very strong one, the personal God, the prophecies of the Bible.
DNA code?
Only God knows.
You said?
The complexity of the DNA code.
DNA. I'm sorry. I thought it's DNA.
Da Vinci Code. No, no.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, the DNA code barely mapped out. Literally libraries of information. So I mean, just the vast complexity.
should I step in here?
Yeah, I'll just say personal God prophecy, sacrifice. Yeah, and I'll go ahead and leave it off from there.
Okay. I'm a former Christian, and I was actually very devout. Stood on street corners with a microphone and preached and knocked on doors and handed out tracts. I was an evangelical Christian, a Pentecostal, actually. Went to a charismatic church. Did the speaking in tongues and the being slayed by the Lord, if you know what that is, and all of the stuff. If you're watching a movie about a scary church, that's the sort that I went to. And I don't mean that in a denigrating way. That's just most people, when they see worship in that form, or not most, probably most, many Christians, if they see worship in that form, are sort of scared by it. I came from a church that pretty much did everything except for the snake handling, and I'm sure if it had ever occurred to the pastor, we would have. And then I became a Baptist, and from a sort of.
Can I just ask where was that church?
It was in Washington State, in Everett, Washington. It was called the Gospel Temple.
Okay, because my parents belonged to Community Chapel, which is a bit. It wasn't not quite that bad, but it was pretty close.
Pretty close.
They collapsed in 1982, I think.
I think the Gospel Temple still is in existence. And I mean, I'm 56, so maybe the names of some of these people will mean nothing to you. I don't know, because you have a young face. But when I was a Christian, Andre Crouch and the Disciples and Jimmy Swaggart were hugely popular singers. Run Baby Run by Nicky Cruz, and different books by David Wilkerson and Salem Kerbin. And, it was before the, what was that very long series of novels about the rapture and
the Left
Behind books. I had come out of my Christian faith probably about the same time that those books became popular. But before that happened, before I stepped away from Christianity, I joined a Baptist congregation. And it was actually, oddly, a Baptist minister who inadvertently was responsible for me leaving Christianity. A combination of this Baptist minister and C.S. Lewis. And I know that wasn't C.S. Lewis's intention. I'm a huge C.S. Lewis fan. And I actually like Ravi Zacharias to an extent. Don't agree with him, but I like listening to him. Sorry, that was just a little bit of background. I'm going to say in advance that this is a big enough subject that I can conceive of this debate being in 2 sessions, if you don't have any objection to that.
Yeah.
Is that okay? If we don't come to, if we're not finished by the time that our 30 minutes and 42 seconds have expired, would you be interested in a part 2?
I think so. We could see then if you want to do it now or do it later as well.
Sure. Oh yeah, I wasn't meaning do it one after the other, but
Yeah.
I
did that with Joe on 4th of July.
So the reason that I give you that background is because I'm with you 100% on faith. My own personal opinion is that the best reason to believe in God, and I'm going to I'm referring specifically to God within the Christian context. The best reason to believe in God is actually faith. And, there's also, am I going to pronounce this correctly? Sensus divinitatis. Sort of that we know that God exists. I am familiar with that Christian viewpoint. Used to believe it myself, that all atheists really know that God exists. And maybe that's true. I'm not an atheist in the sense that I would say categorically that God doesn't exist. He certainly might. The only God that I disbelieve in utterly, and again, with the concession that I could be wrong, is actually the God of Christianity. I don't disbelieve in God in the sense of, I don't consider the idea ridiculous or ludicrous or even unlikely. And I'm always puzzled by atheists who are or who do, because they will believe in extraterrestrials as an example. And, there's lots of extraterrestrial beings that I could conceive that would be effectively God for me. You wouldn't have to be, significantly advanced in order to really blow my mind. So there could be aliens out there that, if they told me they were God, sure, okay. And if I can accept that possibility, then I can certainly accept the possibility of there being an actual omnipotent, omniscient, possibly outside of time and space, entity. I'm not opposed to intelligent design. I don't think it's any worse of a conjecture than macroevolution is. However, I suspend judgment on that. And I don't really care which way, So, which way the answer is.
You mentioned atheist. I was going to say they say the modern atheist says, I don't believe in God and I hate him.
Yeah, right. That's definitely not me. I'm not going to say it's not true of some people. And I think that in a lot of cases it's true, because new atheism, and I hate that term, has what's the word? People who are more interested in rhetoric than anything else. So I don't actually care a whole bunch for Dawkins, or there are aspects of things that Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and Daniel Dennett, etc., the Four Horsemen. There are aspects that I appreciate, but I think that they're enemies of atheism as much as benefactors, in the same way that the Phelps family is sort of an enemy of Christianity. You know what I'm talking about, the godhatesfag.com.
Yeah. Except I would say that there are no Christians out there that say, well, Phelps, they're one of us, or nobody listens to them. But Dawkins is very popular, and he sells millions and millions of books. And he builds off the atheist, the atheist who says, I don't believe in God and I hate him. That's the person that's raging against something. Often Dawkins, he really feeds that fire.
He does.
That's kind of the new atheist.
I don't appreciate it as an old atheist, to distinguish myself from a new atheist.
Classic. I'm a classical liberal. You're a classical atheist.
I'm a classical atheist. For me, atheism means one thing and one thing only. And it means that I don't believe in God, or someone who doesn't believe in God. It doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. It doesn't mean all sorts of other things that can be extrapolated from it. Some things can reasonably be extrapolated from it, but a lot of the things that Dawkins and Hitchens, as amusing was as Christopher was to listen to, and he was a consummate speaker, I sort of rue the day that new atheism raised its head.
He had some really great debates with Turek. I think they debated twice, and I like Frank Turek, and I think he's really
I'm
good.
sad to say I don't actually know who that is. I know who. I follow a lot of Christian apologists. I mean, what is it? Habermas and Lacuna and William Lane Craig, and the guy who wrote, I always forget his name, Cold Case Christianity, and Ravi, and I'm on all of their blogs and forums and mailing.
Strobel.
I don't think a whole bunch about Strobel.
Well, he wrote Cold Case Christianity.
Strobel. I thought that it was a guy's name, Warner or something, that wrote Cord.
No, he's Saddleback Mountain, the guy that wrote the. You're talking about Warren,
right?
Yeah, I don't care for him. He's Saddleback. He wrote Purpose-Driven Life and stuff like that.
No, that's Warren, and I know I don't like him either.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Warner, Jay Warner.
Yeah, I think he has initials for his first name.
Yeah, sorry, you're right.
He was like a detective or something, right?
Yeah.
And for myself, anytime that I'm interested in something enough that I'm going to debate it with something, I'm fortunate. I've read 3 books a week for 48 years, and I haven't, at least that many books a week. I'm a fast reader, so if I'm on a Christian Facebook group and somebody recommends a book, the Stephen Myers books, or is it Michael Behe's books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I obtain it and read it. Because to me, a person looks like a horse's ass if they are only referencing reviews of books of Amazon, and I've caught people doing that. So I do believe that faith is important, and I believe that, in my own personal opinion, if I were to become a Christian again, and that's not outside the realm of possibility, that it would be for reasons of faith and not from any Christian apologetic argument that I've ever read.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was maybe it was Kant or somebody that said that. Now he went too much into the faith realm, I think, but it's the idea that there is the philosophical and the mental aspect, right? The intelligent aspect, but then it does take a little bit of a leap of faith, and you're gonna jump in faith in one direction. But I might have been Strobel or somebody that wrote, "I don't have the faith."
Soren Kierkegaard.
Kierkegaard, yeah, sorry. But Turek says he wrote, "I don't have enough faith to be an atheist."
Right, That's yeah. I like Soren Kierkegaard, and he's talked about, we say the leap of faith. Now he was actually writing about the leap to faith, which is blinder yet. But my problem with your proposition, you've already addressed, is that it's sort of 2 parts. You're not just claiming that God or gods are the most reasonable explanation of and for our world, but specifically the Christian God. And I've given you my, background and initial response. I'm going to pass it back to you to explain how.
Okay, so yeah, I don't think anything in the world makes sense without a transcendental being. Again, we talk about moral laws, truth, belief, really the fact that you can have faith. Or is that predetermined? I think all these things require some sort of transcendental being, the beginning of the universe, the three laws of physics, thermodynamic laws, all that require a beginning and an end. And so, like, all of these things require a creator. We know all things that have a cause have a causer, and God, being outside of the physical universe, needs no causer because he had no cause. But I think only Christianity has a reason and purpose for relieving the suffering of others. You get into Hinduism, a lot of these different faiths. Really, why would you ever help anybody? Because it actually harms them, because they have the reincarnation cycle, and you pay for your past sins in today's life. So we would actually be better off making them suffer more, because they could get to that ultimate point of nirvana, or what do they call it? That cycle. They're going through this cycle, and eventually they're going to try to get to some level, and they pay for their past life sufferings in this life. So we should actually make them suffer more so they can get through that more. Evolution, why would you help anybody in evolution? Survival of the fittest. Why would you sacrifice your own wealth in order to help someone else who's weaker? Clearly they're weaker because they need you. And so I think evolution denies that reasoning. So there's no reason to help anybody. Utilitarianism. Utilitarianism. Sorry,
No problem.
thinking Unitarian, but utilitarianism doesn't really make very much sense either. I can get into all sorts of reasons for that. Islam. Well, you might help a Muslim, but you would never help anybody else, right? Some people might say that Islam says to slay everybody else. So I won't get into that. But only Christianity says when someone demands something of you, give them more, right? The Roman soldier says, walk a mile, walk two. Self-sacrifice, helping the poor, the suffering. It was Christians that created the university system, right? You go to these schools and you look at their mottos, and it's all God-based. Princeton, Harvard, Yale, all the great Ivy League schools that hate God now are very anti-religious, were started by Christians. So education is a Christian value. They used to, in America, before you had the public the miseducation system, people used to learn in little community houses, and they all could read, so they could read the Bible. Sovereign God and free will. I kind of got into a lot of free will. I think a loving God, I mentioned that. The idea of evil, right? So the fact that God, he allowed free choice, knowing that people would choose against him, but he created this plan that he would save humanity from themselves. And I think only Christianity has this loving God. And again, love itself, I think, doesn't really make any sense outside of a Christian worldview. What is it that you have with your wife? Is it love, or is it just natural chemical reactions inside the head? Nobody's going to go their girlfriend and say, I have this funny feeling that my brain is making me feel. I'm sure it'll pass, though. Don't worry about it, right? No, they say, I love you. I have this this deep sense that I don't feel for anybody else. And I think to have meaning, it has to be actually love. It can't be just some funny feeling within the head. Only Christianity has an answer to the problem of evil. What is the atheist, the naturalist? They complain about evil and say that evil exists, and that disproves God, because a loving, good God would never allow for evil to exist. But what's the atheist answer? Evil wins, right? I mean, in the end, you're all dead. To quote Keynes, I guess, in the end, we're all dead. And so only Christianity has an answer to evil, that God comes and slays evil, and he brings all those who choose to follow him into eternity. So I think Christianity is very special in that manner, and is the only one that really makes sense, I believe. Call it foolishness to the unbeliever. God sacrificing himself seems crazy. It's not something man would make up. Christianity is the only religion that's God seeking out the human, right? All the other religions are these powerful gods that man bows down to and sacrifices their virgin daughters to. But in Christianity, it abhors all of that. And it's actually God coming down to man and saving him, because man can't save himself. No other religion offers assurance. So even the Muslim will say, they don't even know if Muhammad is in heaven, right? We're just gonna have to wait till the end.
Yep.
Right. So,
That's true. That's true. I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. So I think only Christianity says, in the end, good defeats evil. All the naturalist says, evil is here. End of story. Right? Evil's here. In the end, we die. Evil wins. Hitler is no different than some Mother Teresa or somebody like that.
I think maybe I should step in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say first that in many respects, I agree with you. I think that the world is a significantly better place with Christianity in it. I don't know if that would continue to be true, but I have no reason to believe otherwise. I acknowledge that hospitals and universities, and some people will argue the Greeks had universities, and so did the Indians. And yes, they did, but not to the same scale or even in the same structure of the modern universities that we have today. And yes, there were hospitals in a fashion pre-Christianity, but not hospitals. I don't know how to say it any other way than that.
It was like stuff for the elite. I mean, the super rich could have their education.
They were places that you went to die primarily. Lots of them didn't actually even treat you. Sure, we owe a lot to Christianity. I would never contest that. What was the other point? However, and I apologize if this sounds like an aside, but that's the problem for me of verbal debate. I actually prefer debating in text because I can copy paste and scroll back up and respond. It's easier for me. And I spent decades arguing, literal decades arguing on the page. I don't mean this disrespectfully at all, and it comes across to Christians as being disrespectful. But I don't see Jesus's death and resurrection as particularly that great of a sacrifice. I have two daughters of my own, and I don't believe in heaven or hell, but I would die for them. And I would die for any of my students. Believe this or not, if I believed entirely that you were going to suffer everlasting torment and my personal extinction would save you, I would die for you. And I don't even know you. And to me, that's just the right thing to do. Where that sense of right came from, I don't know. But I'm not omnipotent. I'm not omniscient. I've never talked to God. And I don't know that I'm going to come back 3 days later, right? Jesus had that knowledge.
Well,
had a daddy who was God. So considering you would die for your kids, right?
well, I think that's a good point that we could kind of jump off on.
Mhm.
And so I know you say you would die for a stranger. If it came down to that, I don't know. I don't think anybody would.
I don't know, like, if somebody burst into the room on camera here and said, I'm going to kill Nelson unless you take your own life, you're right, I couldn't do it, because I'm a chicken shit, right? My natural instincts wouldn't allow me. But I've been in situations where I thought that I was going to die saving kids, and I would put my, I would die for my kids. Now, again, I don't know if I could if it was in that same scenario I gave with you, but I would rush into the fire to take them out of the school, etc., etc. I love my babies. They're my babies. So
Yeah,
all I'm saying is, even if, and especially if I knew that after 3 days, everything was going to be hunky-dory again.
Well, I mean, he didn't, right? He blocked himself. So this is kind of the really complicated issue of the Trinity, is Jesus being the Son of God, the second member of the Trinity, kept himself from this knowledge. I mean, you can see he sweat drops of blood. He was in so much anguish, mental anguish, because he knew where he was going, right? Humans don't know what hell is really like. We got some written explanations, but what is it actually? Is it really that terrible? And Jesus knew what it was like, and he believed that he would go there, and he didn't necessarily, he in that moment of torment, right? He blocked himself from the knowledge of being raised again, even if he said, okay, I'm going to go for there for 3 days and be raised again. But more importantly, yes, you would do, I'm sure you would sacrifice for your kids. I'm sure my parents would. I don't have any kids, but if I do, I'm sure I would. And I'm sure I would, there are moments where I would say, yes, I would rush the gunman or something like that, right? But would I do it for Jeffrey Dahmer? Like, if somebody went up to Jeffrey Dahmer and was going to kill him, would you do it for a Hitler or Joseph Stalin or Kim Jong-un, right?
No, but
in North
he was
Korea.
also doing it for his mom and for his earthly father, and for, if you believe he had brothers and sisters, and I do, based on the gospel,
half brothers.
Half brothers. So it wasn't, so all of the other people that were inadvertent salvations, so to speak. But, I think that Jesus probably loved his mommy. And unless she had some special waiver given by God, she was
according to Catholics.
According to Catholics, yes, right. And as far as the whole idea, okay, I don't think that morals require God. But simultaneously, and I know this sounds contradictory and it's hard to explain, I think that morals are objective. But they're objective in the same way that everything else that humans refer to as subjective are objective. We refer to the laws of nature, of gravity, the second law of thermodynamics, blah, 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 as objective facts. And we refer to them that way. We even believe, without any evidence, that those same laws apply in every single inch of the galaxy, of the universe. Our science and our philosophizing sort of depends on it. But let's just say we've only been to, you know, the gnat's ass of the universe. That's it.
Right, and I understand
So,
that some people say that, but I would just say moral laws are not in any way like natural laws, right?
well,
I think it is a natural law,
I'm
but
not trying to say that they're like natural laws,
I mean, say you believe in it as you believe in them,
but
but I mean, I'm just saying that they are very different, and I think you are saying that yes, you do agree that they're very different. I can't observe a moral law, I can't test a moral law.
but there's something that, okay, we look at moral laws, and, you know, let's say thou shalt not kill, you know, pretty popular moral law, pretty well-known moral law. You know, first, I think that's sort of a no-brainer. It's in our own self-interest, and, you know, humans, unless they're sociopaths, tend to be empathetic. So it's easy to extrapolate a moral, something that we've observed in the world, and call it a law and assume that it applies everywhere and all, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is, imagine for a moment that there was no life in the universe. Would morals exist?
I would say yes. I mean, they would be there, but they wouldn't be applied to anybody.
See, I would say no. For me, it's, I'm going to say self-evident, you know, for myself, not that it has to be self-evident to you. I'm going to say it's self-evident that for morals to exist, humans have to exist. And I'm using the word humans to mean sentient, sapient beings. You know, if it ends up one day that we discover that dolphins are like us in all of those respects, I'm perfectly happy to apply the word human to different species, even if they live behind Beltiges and some other, you know, in another galaxy. I don't care. So
I think moral laws are very difficult to come up from a naturalistic worldview. I mentioned like Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, right?
mm-hmm.
This natural feeling from within. When you kill somebody, you know it's different. You know it's not like killing a dog. It's not like killing a monkey. Killing a human is special.
It is.
Even if it is for the right purpose. I mean, people that go to war and defend their country and their own life and they kill people, they can't get that out of their head, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, from a naturalistic worldview, it's like, no, you just went over, you killed some other group of humans, you know, somebody that didn't look like you, it wasn't part of your tribe. It was, in fact, they were trying to annihilate your tribe. You did everything right, but it's a human, right? And it's not like killing a pack of dogs or something.
No, you know, and I understand that. But we do have empathy. And I think that explains an awful lot. You know, and again, we have 1 minute and 15 seconds left, and I think we're going to have to agree probably to do a part 2 on this. Is that?
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. Let's take, and this seems totally off on a tangent. Let's take the prohibition against incest, right? Well, that one of the scientific explanation of that was to spread your seed, right? If you kept it all in the family, it would eventually lead to your extinction because of, you know, birth defects, etc. And so fathers would give their daughters to the sons in different tribes, right? And that was for their self-preservation. I'll agree not to burn your village down if you don't burn my village down. And obviously, we screw up an awful lot because we've burnt down as a species a whole lot of the opposition's villages. And I'm sorry, that's it.
Okay, we'll do